Welcome to Tea Time with Shaylee and Amber, the podcast where we talk about all the shit that your horse wants you to know and what you can do about it. Amber is a horse trainer and a personal results coach, certified in Theta and Semitic breathwork. Shaylee is an animal communicator who also teaches communication. Both knowledge seekers with the intention of sharing that knowledge and hoping that we can encourage the listeners to do the same. Today's episode, we are chatting a little all over the place, maybe some alien talk, honoring our journeys, not downplaying or comparing our stories to others so that we can fully process and heal, and a little bit about how we hand our power over in decision making, and a few other nuts that were dropped. So I am excited to get started. Let's listen.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. If you missed last week's episode, you might want to watch it on YouTube because it was kind of interesting. And Amber actually ended up having to finish my thoughts for me. So, yeah, that's why the name of the episode is what it is. And you might get a little chuckle if you check it out. But today we are going to talk about the aliens. And we had another thing. I was like, Amber, write things down because we were talking earlier in the day and we were like, we need to talk about aliens. And what was the other thing?
It was diminishing or downplaying our own experiences because we feel like they're not as bad as somebody else's, or we don't have a right to feel, like we don't have a right to feel a certain way because there's people out there that have it worse than us. And just sort of not honoring our own experiences for what they are and being able to heal from that because of that. But I just remembered that the last episode we did talk about foreboding joy. And also on the list is aliens. So.
Well, the foreboding joy, I feel like totally ties into that. And maybe that's why I'm still hooked on this little subject, is because I like trivialized things that happened in my childhood because I was like, oh, other people had it way worse. So why should I deserve to process this if someone has had this like massive trauma? And I think that's that comparison piece that like our horses are always trying to remind us about, like not comparing moment to moment, but not comparing your experience to others or their past experience to where they are now. And I feel like it gets so muddied up when we are comparing our experiences. And not to bring up my little horse search again, but I do feel like it's so interesting that I'm having to like practice what I preach with like when I'm like looking for horses and like, calling my decision making power back. Because immediately, like when you're looking at something and you're trying to make a decision, actually, you know what's funny? Normally I look at something and this ties into the aliens too. So like this morning I was looking at this little like EFT like thing that you stick on the back of the phone. And I sent it to like a couple of my friends and I was like, check this thing out. Like, do you believe in it or do you not? It has some peer studies. It's like, it seems reviewed. There's some case studies and stuff. And one of my friends was like, no, I think it's complete bullshit. I mean, their marketing is really good. And, she had like a super strong opinion about it. But I had already made up my mind about how I felt. And I wanted her opinion too. Like, I wanted to know what she said, but I had already purchased it because I made up my own mind. And then she like, I told her, like, I was like, oh, I really value your opinion. And like, it's cool to go into it with that mindset. But I'm buying it anyway. And it's funny to me how like certain things we like just have that power, it's like, I don't care if it works or not. I'm going to spend the $80 because it's going to make me feel better. And that's where the alien thing came in because I was like, well, what if it's just another way the government's tracking us? And then I was like, well, Amber always says that the aliens are going to save us before shit goes wrong with the government or before robots take over. That's where that came in. But then like with the horse thing, it's like, immediately I look at a horse and this is something that I do, right? Like I do pre-purchases for people all the time. I fucking connect to horses for a living. And I like see this horse and I like see all the signs and I'm like, oh, I feel really great about it. I have all these signs. This is amazing. And then I'm like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you, and I'm like sending it to everybody and just like shooing my decision making power like out to everybody. And then it's like that comparison piece where like I get all these different little parts and pieces back. And they're like, well, in my experience, this is really bad. In my experience, this is good, and this is bad. And then I come back into myself and I'm like, okay, well, next, because I can't make a decision. And based on your experiences, I'm comparing my experiences and like what I had in the past versus now. And it's wild, man. Wild how that all horses really bring that up in us.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking of when Johnny has this crystal and it's a wolf carving, and we were in a crystal store and he was like, I want shungite because I think that's how you say it, because I want it to protect me from the EMF. And I was like, first of all, I didn't say that to you. Where did you hear that from? And he ended up finding these little beads that he stuck on his necklace to go around. So when he feels like he has this little field around him, and I feel like it goes back to the question, is everything placebo? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I can't get away from it, where even the energy that's put into like sage and like smudging space, and oh, it's shown to clear energy. And is it really doing that, or is it because we believe so strongly, and so many of our ancestors and so many people of the collective feel the same way about it, that energy is put into it, and then that is what is actually doing it, not the sage or not the copal or not the palo santo or not the antibiotics or not the shungite. It's like, because there's such strong collective belief around this certain thing, is why it's actually something that does in fact work. Because I don't doubt that those things are there and in place, but I just wonder, like, why could we, if we got to the peakiest peak of our enlightenment, could we just, this is something I've actually been saying to myself this week, actually, since the last 3 days that we talked, could we just say, like, this is the way it is, and like our magic wand, it's like, bink, obviously it's what we teach, we should be able to do that, but our human brains are here for that whole like vast experience of humaning. But the last couple of days, because I'm so overwhelmed with all of these, I'm doing a parasite cleanse right now, and I know I need to hit that liver with some cleansing, and like I need to start working out again, and I need to drink water. And then I was like, what if I just believed that I could be at my peak fitness without doing anything different? What if I didn't need all that? What if I stopped thinking about all of that and I just got to be at my most healthiest because I say so, without changing anything? So it's been this interesting thing I've been playing with, because you get so overwhelmed. I'm like, oh, I have to get cayenne pepper. I have to get that clay shit. Oh, I'm going to mix baking powder. I'm like, and then the herbs for flirt and all the things that I'm going to give them. It was like, I just need to calm down, because there's too many things and then I don't do anything. I have like the decision-making paralysis. I'm like, well, doing nothing isn't working. So that's what I've decided. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I get that. I feel so I've been doing like this mobility training for like my joints and stuff, and I'm on this cleanse, and I think that and it's so funny that you're like, is everything a placebo? But that's what I said this morning with the little sticker on my phone. My friend was like, oh, I'm all for you not taking my advice, like, do what you want, as long as you're not just like blind going into it, like you have your reasons of why you want this and what you think it's going to do for you, so like the intention, right? And so I'm like, yep, that feels good to me. And so I'm doing this mobility class and I'm doing this cleanse, and I have had it set so much in my mind. And I don't know why this person just clicked with me. I think I just liked that, like, the videos are like the guy's like kind of funny and he laughs and stuff like that. And so I have like literally convinced myself that like this has changed my life. I'm like, my life is forever changed. I can breathe again. My shoulders are back. And I have this mindset and I'm feeling it. And I like turned sideways in the mirror the other day and like my shoulders are exactly where they were before. Like I'm like, I haven't noticed a single difference in like my actual skeletal body. And immediately I was like, no, the mirror's warped. Something's going on with it. I don't know what's going on. I was like, I for sure have changed. And so I do think that there is like a lot of power behind our thoughts and like our beliefs and stuff. And I was even having a lesson with Lockie the other day. And I like got on the mounting block, and this is like Biggie, so the one that's been bucking me off. And well, I shouldn't say that. I haven't ridden him in a while, but he bucked me off in the past. And he was like, all right, get on the mounting block and like lay over him. And immediately, like, I had a story of like, oh, he's going to walk off. And like, that's what happened. And then I was like, okay, like, I understand the power of my thoughts and like visualization and stuff like that. Like, what am I doing over here? And immediately I was like, I told myself, I was like, there's no reason why this shouldn't work. My chest is open. I'm a new person physically. Like, I just have all this energy behind it. And I like laid all over him, and he like was like perfectly fine and stood there. So it is crazy because everything has a frequency, right? So if we think about that and we're thinking about the shit that like the radiation from our phones, if we are like, so like the teacher that Amber and I really like, Abraham Hicks, we've talked about her in the past. For those of you who don't know, Esther Hicks is a like medium of sorts, and she connects to this non-physical collective intelligence that call themselves Abraham. And so essentially she so she connects to this, I guess that's what I just want to say, infinite intelligence. Does that make sense? And so she gets like these readings and these messages, and it's all about the law of attraction, and like the frequency that you put out, you get back to you. And so what she talks about with momentum is that you only have to think about something for 16 seconds before it's like in your vibrational escrow, or she calls it a vortex. So like everything that's around you. So everything that we're thinking about on a daily basis is already manifested in the non-physical. We just have to be in alignment with it, which is why like when you say it rains, it pours, it's like when you get that momentum going and something negative happens, then your energy aligns with like whatever else you were thinking about, because it's an all-inclusive universe. That's never like, I don't want this, therefore I'm going to think about not having it and it won't come to me. All the universe hears, or that frequency hears, is this. So like this lack or this like pain or whatever, and you just keep aligning with that. That's why we're always like harping on like having a daily practice and stopping the momentum and like really being deliberate about what you're thinking about, because everything that you do think about for 16 seconds or more is literally manifested all around you. And for those of you that are thinking poo poo, no, I don't think so, you should totally try it, because that's what I said to my mom when I was in high school. And I said, if this is true, I'm going to pour my heart and soul into this, and I'm not going to study for my math test, my next 3 math tests, and I'm going to get 98s on all of them. And I did. And I failed math in college. So it works. Yeah, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I do feel like if you have that low frequency, right, and you're worried about, I guess worry is ultimately what it comes down to. You're worried about your phone poisoning you. That bitch is going to poison you. She's going to poison you hard.
Yeah. And I was just talking to my friend. We went to dinner the other night, and we were even, are we allowed to bring up controversial topics on here about, the COVID vaccine? Where it was like some people she knew were having these major side effects, and we were talking about who got it, who didn't, all the things. But I was like, is it more of why the person got the vaccine? Was it they got it because, well, whatever, just give it to me? Or was it because I'm in so much fear that I need that to be okay? And what did that bring in? So regardless of how you feel about the vaccine, like, I wonder the side effects that are happening to people, is it because it was the fear that drove them, or the need to feel like they were fitting in or doing what they were supposed to be doing, but they didn't want to do it. Like the different vibes behind getting it is producing a different experience on the other side of it. And that's like something I've had that conversation with several different people in different ways, but that is what it is. If I'm running around stressed out that like everything's trying to get me, you're in that survival state, like your body is going to tell you. It's going to tell you to stop
Mm-hmm.
in whatever way it decides to. So being really careful about those thoughts and following those inspirations and invitations to like just surrender to, what is the path of least resistance in that moment, instead of even feeling like the overwhelm sometimes when you have a lot of decisions to make. That's not the time to make the decision. And that's usually the time we push harder to find the answer, because we're like, no, we have to figure this out. And you're just swimming harder upstream around it, when it's like, right now I'm overwhelmed. There's 1,000 different options. I'm in the void. Then it's time to just get quiet, go take a freaking nap and go meditate or go do something mindless where you're not trying so hard to figure the things out. Like just step away from it. And it's not like the same as disassociating or distracting yourself. I mean, actually not even that stuff's all in place for a reason. So long as you don't get stuck there chronically, like just go for it. If your mind is like, I am going to short circuit, like the first half of July, I felt like I was so overwhelmed with all of these deadlines and all of this technical stuff that I had to get out and get done. And I'm in this new course, and it was just like it felt like I was running through like a tunnel, and there was like all the information was like, and so for this last week, I feel like I've just been honoring when my body's like, go lay down. And I just go lay down. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I know. And I sit up and I'm super, like, I stayed up till like 2:30 last night, like pounding stuff out because I just rested all this week, basically. And not that I didn't do stuff still, but when I felt like I needed to lay down, I just went and lay down, or I sat down, I watered my yard, I stared off into the freaking clouds for, 30 minutes. And I paid attention to the voice that came in to say, you're being lazy. You're wasting time right now. Because that came up a lot. And I was having that conversation with that voice and being like, no, I'm resting. No, I'm resting. I did recognize that voice is most likely my grandfather, and just what I used to hear when I was little when people would rest, and he never rested. That guy had back surgery, and I don't remember him ever being like laid up. Like he just wore a big hard brace right after and was like back at it. And so I didn't really ever see anybody growing up rest ever. Not when I never saw anybody sick. I never saw anyone. So it's interesting because I do live on the same property as my family, and my mom does live in the house up the hill. And I'll notice that when I'm like laying on my bed, I usually leave my door open, that if I hear her coming, my initial response is to sit up really fast and like not just be laying around. And then eventually I've been like, I just busted my ass all morning. Like I am allowed to lay down on my bed for a minute, for God's sakes. So it's super interesting to like navigate all of that.
I know. I will feel that way too sometimes, because my husband works really hard and he's got a massive work ethic, and like he just came home from overseas and like didn't even rest, like was like, oh yep, I see we need to have everything weed eaten, like, so he like freaking started doing like yard work right away and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I do find myself like in that little pattern too, where I'm like, oh, I gotta pull my weight, like I definitely can't be taking a nap midday while he is. And it's like we use our energy too, like with what we do, we're using our energy. It's not, we aren't lazy, but it is funny how like that self-care and like listening to your body when you are tired, I think it all goes back to that, like how you said your grandpa, like it goes back to the comparison piece. Well, this experience is this way, so my experience has to be this way too, and like I want to make sure I pull my weight and like midday. So like if he comes home and like the house is dirty, I'm like, oh God, I'm a failure. Like I gotta have everything perfect because you just worked all day. And it's like I totally like trivialize what I've done. And it's like and he never makes me feel that. Like that's not on him at all. He never complains, never says anything. But it's like my own shit that I have to deal with where I'm like, oh man, I'm a lazy cow, like never clean the house. Dishes are still there from this morning. There's a fly in here that you were trying to kill yesterday and I never got it. Sorry.
Well, that circles back around to the whole beginning of this conversation of, you know, not really honoring like what you need or what you've been through and not resting around it and giving yourself like grace and space to heal around it. Because I think what people forget is that when you have been living in that like stress state and you start to unravel it and you start to realize that you've been holding all this stuff either physically in your body or just energetically, and then you recognize it and you start to release it or integrate it or whatever, like your body goes into like the deep need for rest to like restore, because that's just what it needs to do after it's been working so hard your entire life to keep all this shit going. And to realize that deep resting after doing even like the somatic journey stuff or having like sessions with people, facilitating a session and receiving, it's like the rest after is because that is what's needed to actually let your nervous system like catch up, right? So people need to remember that part.
Yeah, and I think not feeling guilty for like doing the inner work too, if you don't feel like you had a quote bad childhood, because I don't feel like I had a bad childhood. I had like two parents who loved me. They fought over us and like there was stuff that we, were maybe drug into as kids that was only supposed to be for adults. And like we had our own like trials and tribulations and stuff, but there was always a roof over our head. Like by all standards, like my parents were really good parents. And when I first started this shadow work stuff, I feel like I slipped into that guilt of like, well, I shouldn't be feeling this way because like my mom did the best that she could and like my dad did the best that he could. So like I just need to like let this be, knowing that my parents like did what they could. And like I've had to kind of talk myself into the space of like, yeah, they did the best that they could and I can have compassion for that, but I can also feel exactly the way I felt and I can go through the motions of what I need to let go of and what was very real for me. Because I was thinking the other day, I was helping a client and she was like, I just can't allow myself to like really go there because my parents are so nice to me and all this stuff. And I was like, but when you like, we all can have the exact same emotion, regardless of if it's something that doesn't seem big to other people. Like, if I think so, like, the biggest thing that I've had to heal recently was my mom, like taking away my first dog. And the word that came up when I was like really feeling into the emotion and like gonna like pull it out of my body was like despair. Like I literally was like, this is despair. I was so distraught. It like was despair. And someone else who maybe lost a husband or who lost a parent or maybe got raped or big things can feel that same emotion too, but that doesn't mean what I felt wasn't real for me in that moment and didn't make long lasting effects on my life. And so what we're trying to tell you guys is like those big emotions that you feel that you're trying to clear, like they're resurfacing for a reason, and it does not matter what someone else's experience was. That emotion was real for you, and that is big enough for you to like feel worthy enough to like address that.
Yeah, for sure. And even for there's people out there that have had major like traumas, like major, that collective people would be like, oh my gosh, that's horrific, I can't believe, and they'll still downplay it. So it's all relative to like your mindset. Like I spent most of my life people talking about, well, mostly when I got into theta, people talking about healing your inner child, and I was always like, you know what, like I had my mom, I had my grandparents, I went to a private school. I had a horse, like I can't complain about anything. And it was like, well, how did it feel compared to, XYZ? And it was like, I'm not going to even tell, my story is not even worthy to tell. Like, and then when I went into the advanced training and the resentment started coming up, and every time my mom would express, she was like, I need help with this, or I'm struggling with this. Oh, or she would worry. That was a huge trigger for me. When my mom would worry, it would make me almost angry, which was crazy. And I had no idea. I was like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, my mom gave me everything. She busted her ass. She was a single mom. She was super young. Like, she's a freaking rock star. Like, how could her saying she's worried about something make me angry? That's wild. Eventually, we dug around, because a lot of the responsibility was put on me to be a certain way to take care of her. I was feeling the resentment because it was like, that is not my place. And I could feel it internally, like there was a pull of, that's not my job, but then feeling guilty about feeling that way. And so it really took me honoring and recognizing that, sorry, it sounded like the chicken was being attacked. Honoring that and recognizing, oh yeah, I need to break apart the fact that I was a very small human, a 3-year-old by herself on a dock, watched my dad have a seizure, watched him fall into the water and drown in front of me. And then I was there for we don't know how long. Like, that's a big deal. It took me 30, how old am I? It took me like 35 years to even get to a point where I'd be like, oh, because people would bring that up. Wow, that seems like it should be a big deal. I'm like, nah, it's fine. Because I always had to be good. I always had to be fine. You're not allowed to be, worried, because it stresses your mom out. You need to take care of your mom. So like my whole life, I grew up hearing, she doesn't remember, she was really little. It didn't affect her. She was so young. She doesn't know the difference. When I think about it at school, I think about every Father's Day. It was awkward. I was embarrassed because I was trying to like hide the fact that it was maybe like weird for me to draw something for my grandfather. You know what I mean? Just like little things that I didn't realize were compounded into creating my experience now as an adult. But it took like really going back to that moment and seeing it as if it wasn't me, just witnessing it as if it was someone else, and having compassion for that little girl that was not me, somebody else. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, that's kind of gnarly. Right. And so even me, I didn't tell, oh, you didn't get to listen to the episode because it's not out yet and you haven't heard it because I edited it. But I didn't go into the specifics about your particular story because I was like, well, it's not my story to tell. But I did say there was a situation where, so when I heard the story of what happened to you, and you can share it if you want, I was like devastated in my body. And so for me, even looking at that situation, it feels equally as like, the word that comes to me is horrifying, because if I put myself in that position as a child, I had similar things, but not even close to that happen. And it was like really, really impactful. You know what I mean? And so I think looking at stories, even if they're your own from a third party perspective, as if it's not you, and like seeing it for what actually happened could maybe support like that healing piece and that connecting the two parts together. I really had to take myself out of the situation and look at it like it wasn't me, and then I found compassion. It took a very long time. It was very odd.
You know what's interesting is I kind of do that with my horses sometimes. Like if I get frustrated or I get in the feels, I will be like, okay, I need to look at this as if I've never met this horse before. And like, what is he telling me right now? And like, I have to have compassion for what, I don't know his story. He's scared right now. I'm not frustrated because here's like this, innocent horse telling me that he's got some trauma that I don't understand. So I think that's like a really good perspective and a really good like idea for a lot of us to just kind of like take a step back and see that from like, someone else's shoes. It's not me, or it's not my horse. And one thing that I will say too, that I hear a lot, and especially from my husband, which is like so annoying. I mean, it is what it is. It's like his process, but like if I tell him like, oh, I had this like healing today, or like Amber and I had this conversation, I had this like revelation and all this trauma that I experienced, and he'll be like, well, that's just life though. I mean, that's just life. And I'm like, yeah, it's just life. And though, like, I'm processing all of this or not holding on to it, or I'm like, don't you think that's cool? Or like, don't you think it's good to like let someone, he's like, no, that's just how life is. Like, life isn't fair and everyone has their trials and tribulations. And like, that's his answer for everything. And I'm like, I never know how to take it. I'm like, okay, well, at least you're not holding on to stuff, I guess, or maybe you are and it's never going to surface. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's probably what he heard growing up. You know what I mean? Like, yep, that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and on with it, you know? So he would like to think that that's just how it is, right? Like you feel the thing, you see the thing, you process the thing, and then you go on to the next thing. But I think for the majority of people, the people pleasy people, not people, um, we like to try to make people comfortable. You know what I mean? And I don't want to make you uncomfortable with my story, you know, or my feelings. I want to take care of your feelings. Everyone's just like throwing that shit back and forth at each other until you find people that can like hold the space for you. You know what I mean? And the value of finding like facilitators or friends that you know you can be like, I've got this thing I need to talk about, and you know that it's not going to affect them. And if they're in a place where it would affect them, they could be like, I can't hold it for you right now. Maybe give me like an hour and I can hear it. You know what I mean? The ability to be honest and just have people not take it personal is like a huge, valuable thing to find in people. So find those people.
Find those people or comment when you listen to this podcast if you need support. We'll reach out to you.
Yeah. And that's like such a big part of, I think, why we wanted to have the membership, because I think that the membership, the tea house is cool because it's so lighthearted. Like we sometimes get into some like sticky shit on the pod, like, you know, childhood trauma and stuff. But like being able to move through it and make it not something that you need to be like ashamed of, or that you need to like, I'm looking for the word. It's not downgrade, but it's downplay the words. You know, we're into a little community where people are like funny. And I was talking to my mom yesterday about, you know, the 21-day vision quest we're going to do. And she was like looking at the thing. She's like, oh, the emojis. And I'm like, gotta keep it fun, man. This shit's heavy. She's like, well, the emojis seem like the whole group vibe is funny. Like, I think somebody was like the other day commented, oh, Nutmeg was dropping some serious nuts in that last episode. And it's just like, so it's like a place where you can go to get support, but then it's also hilarious and everyone's not taking anything too seriously when it doesn't need to be. I just love it in there. It's one of my favorite places.
I know. Same.
So is there anything else?
I think that was a lot of stuff for everyone to process.
For an unplanned, let's just do a quick podcast real quick. And then it's like aliens and
Yeah.
drama.
Well, that's why I was like, we have to do it today because I have so many inspired tidbits happening right now. We have to talk.
Okay, so if anything in this episode resonated with you, then please drop it in the comments, like and share the pod if you feel like someone needs to hear it. We are in August. We are about to launch our 21-day vision quest you do with your horse. It's online, although one day I do believe we are going to take it on the road. Not for 21 days, but maybe for a couple days. Where we are only offering it to the members of the tea house, and it's for a significant discount, and a lot of the stuff you will get in there will be live. And when we do launch it for the public, I think more will be recordings. I think it'll be equally as powerful, but it might be fun to be like, you know, OG. So if you guys want more information on the membership, then I will put the link in the show notes. And I think that's it. Is that it? I'm tired.
See you guys later. See you next week.